Hello everyone. Today is Sunday, February 25th. I've got the bike all back together and put fuel in it, got the new battery in it, so we're going to try to fire it up. So I'll turn the key on, neutral light comes on. It's showing low oil pressure because obviously the motor's not turning over. Once it starts up, it should go to, the light will go out. I noticed the fuel gauge isn't working, so I'm going to have to check that out. I know the sending unit's working good, so there might be a relay or something bad. So you ready? Let's hit the key. Okay. It's not starting. Okay, so there could be a couple things that's causing this. I know the battery's good. I put it on a charger. It's a brand new battery. I did a load test on it before I put it in the bike. It tested good. So I know that my battery's good. My connections at the battery are good. They look brand new. I'll have to check the connection at the starter and see, it could be corroded or something. My concern is, I got to thinking, this gentleman stopped riding this bike in 2015. Okay, so it sat for how many years? Would that be 8 years? And he didn't pass away till just this last summer, I believe it was. So I know he didn't park it because of his illness. So it makes me kind of wonder if there was something wrong with the bike that he parked it back then. So I'm going to have Diane call his wife and talk to her and see if she has any idea if maybe the starter was bad and he parked it. I don't know. Or maybe he was having starting issues at that time and he parked it. But there's a solenoid, there's a solenoid relay, and then the starter in the system. So any one of those could be causing it. The starter, to me, it sounds like it's engaging. It's just not turning the motor over. It sounds like the power's getting to it. So I'm not sure. I don't think it'd be the relay. I don't think it'd be the solenoid. So either the starter's bad, or my other concern is this thing sat for 8 years. Could the engine be locked up from sitting? And again, that's not a bad thing normally. It's usually just surface rust, and you put some WD-40 down the cylinders, which I did that when I had the plugs out. But I didn't think to try to turn the motor over while I had the plugs out. And with the tank on, you can't get to the plug. So I'm going to look it over. I think I'm going to drop the starter first and test it and just see if it spins and how it spins, if it seems like it's got plenty of power. And if it does, then I want to look at pulling the plugs out, taking it outside here and pushing it, putting it in like fifth gear, pushing it, and then dumping the clutch. And hopefully it'll turn the motor enough to get it working smoothly. And then I'll put the starter back on it. And first I'll crank it over before I put the plugs back in and see if it cranks over that way. And if it does, then we'll put the plugs back in and try starting it up. But okay, so the first thing we're going to do is disconnect the battery. Okay, so the starter is located here up at the bottom of the frame at the front of the bike here. That's the engine. You got the starter, you got the regulator here, electric regulator. There's this one wire going to it, the hot wire. This one comes from the battery. There's two bolts that hold it in, and then it just slips out. I'm hoping I got enough play in this wire that I can slip it out, because if I can't, then I'm going to have to probably take this regulator off to get in there to get to the nut that holds this to the starter. I'm hoping I can drop it down enough to take something and get it off. Once I get it dropped down out of there, we'll see. Okay, those two bolts, it takes an 8mm socket to get those off. That should just come out. I might have to get a screwdriver to... It's got an O-ring seal on this end. I don't think any oil will come out. Oh, shit. Yes, oil comes out of that. Well, that's no good. Why would they make it like that? Okay, what I did, I went in and I put down a moving blanket, and I just laid it over. It's laying on that floorboard, but I think it's got it tipped enough that we'll be able to get that starter out of there. I'm hoping all the oil is on that side of the motor now, that it shouldn't be up this high. The motor holds 3.9 quarts, and that's what I put in it. And I probably I don't know, probably 3 or 4 ounces came out, so I might have to add a little bit, but we'll see once we get it to the point it'll start. So let's go ahead and finish taking this starter out. I'm gonna move this just in case it does leak oil again. I don't think anything should come out. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so there is the starter. Now I just need to get this cover off of here to get to the nut that holds that onto the stud on the starter. And I imagine that's probably going to be like a 10 millimeter maybe. Yeah, it looks like 10 millimeter. Yep. Seems like a lot of things on this bike are either 10 millimeter or 8 millimeter. The starter turns. Okay, so I've got my power supply turned on here. I've got the starter here. I got it clamped in a vise because I don't know if it takes off. I don't want it flopping all over the place. Okay, so what I need to do is clamp my ground to the case of the motor. Yeah, it's my power supply. I can crank it up to 10 amps. It's pegging that needle at 10 amps. So I know it's getting power because it's pulling 10 amps. So that tells me I've got a bad starter. So I'm gonna have to order a new starter. So that's about as far as I'm able to go today. Hello everyone, today's March the 4th. I want to give you a little update on the Kawasaki Vulcan. Where I ended the video before was I thought the starter was bad. I pulled the starter off, I tested it with my power supply, and it's rated it'll go up to 10 amps. And when I touched it to the starter, it pegged out at 10 amps and the starter just clicked. So I thought the starter was bad. So I ordered a new starter. I ordered it on eBay. You know, on eBay they have the guaranteed fit. You go through and you tell them your vehicle, and they say this will fit or it won't, and it said this confirms it will fit your vehicle. So I ordered it. It came in Friday, I think it was. Today is Monday, and it came in Friday. I brought it out, and the first thing I did was I hooked it to my power supply just to make sure it worked, and it reacted the same way as the old starter did. It clicked, but it didn't spin. So I thought that's weird. So I hooked it to I took the 12-volt battery out of the bike and I hooked it directly to the starter, and it spun just fine. So I thought, well, maybe my old starter's still good. So I hooked it up and it did the same thing. It spun just fine. It seemed like it had plenty of power. And it felt about the same as far as turning the shaft by hand on both starters. And so I thought, well, I'm just gonna put the new starter on just to be safe. So I'm looking at it, and I can physically see that there's a spline shaft that sticks out of the end of the starter that goes into the ring gear, and that's what spins it to start it. And I could physically see that it was a bigger diameter than the old one, the new one was. So I took dial calipers and I measured them, and it was like 40 thousandths bigger. And that's a lot. I mean, that's a big difference. It'd have been, you know, 3 or 4 thousandths, even 5 thousandths, it probably would have worked. But I thought, there's no way this is going to work. So I tried to put it in the bike, and on the end of the starter, I don't know if you remember it in the other video, it's got a snout on it with an O-ring, and that goes into a hole in the housing. I guess you'd call it like the bell housing, sort of. And that's what locates it on that end of the starter in relationship to the ring gear. So, of course, at that hole, and you got a bigger diameter, you've got 20 thousandths more of that gear, that spline shaft sticking towards the ring gear, and it's just too much. It won't go together because obviously there's too much metal there. And so I contacted the company, and they're going to send me a refund, and I got to send it back and all that stuff. But I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and put the old starter back on. So what I'm going to do, I pulled the spark plugs back out of it now, and I can't, by myself, I can't get it rolling enough to dump the clutch to spin the wheel. So my next option is, let me show you here. My next option is to take this side cover off, and there'll be a plate underneath here. If you take that plate off, you can see the end of the crank and a bolt there. So I'm going to try to put a socket on it and see if I can just turn it manually. In theory, it should turn over fairly easily because the plugs are out of it and it's in neutral. But again, we'll see. It's sat for a long time. So I went ahead and I took most of these bolts out already because you guys don't need to see me take out all the bolts. So I'll go ahead and take this last bolt out. And this is just a plastic cover. It doesn't seal off anything. It's just mainly to make it look nice, I think. Okay, and this is the cover here on the side. Okay, you can see that bolt down in there. Kind of see that bolt down in there. I don't think I got anything. Oh, there it goes. I think. Or did I just... Oh, loosen the bolt. Huh. Left-hand threads. I thought that broke loose awful easy. Oh, here it comes. There it goes. All right. Maybe that did it. I guess what I can try to do is just hit the starter once. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I was a little mistaken there. When I was hitting the starter, when I first got the motor freed up, and I didn't think it was working, after I turned the camera off, I hit it again, and it actually is spinning the motor. It's just because it was spinning it so freely because there's no plugs in it. So this will be the first time I'm going to turn the key on and hit the starter and see what happens. You hear the fuel pump kick on, so it's priming up. I'm going to put the front brake on just in case. I got it in neutral. I got the clutch pulled in. We'll hit the button and see what happens. Yeah, it's not firing. The fuel pressure, it kicks on for a few seconds there and then stops, so it's telling me it's building up fuel pressure. So I don't think it's a fuel delivery issue. The injectors look really good when I took them apart. They weren't dirty or anything. Yeah, I smell gas in the exhaust pipe, so it's not getting fired. So now I need to figure what could be causing that. I guess first thing to do is try to get a plug wire out of there. We'll see if we got a spark at the plug wire. Okay. So I was able to get the plugs out without taking the tank off. It was a pain, but I was able to get them out. And I checked them. I took the plug, put it back in the wire, and touched against the engine and cranked it over, and I wasn't getting a spark. So I went and found another spark plug I had. It wasn't the right brand and the right size, but it's a spark plug. So I put it on there, tried it, I got a good spark. So I ran to O'Reilly's and picked up new plugs, put them on. So now I'm going to try to crank it over and see if it'll start. That sounds like a brand new bike. And I think my fuel gauge is working. I put some more fuel in it, and it's showing about 1/8 of a tank now, so I think that's working. I might go ahead and top this off and see where it goes. sounds beautiful. I can get over how good it's running. Wow. Well guys, I'm done with this thing. It's going up for sale. So if you guys are interested, send me a comment and we'll bring this to your house. So anyway, I just took it for a ride and everything works good on it. It shifts very smooth. It goes through all the gears just fine. Even the fuel gauge is working now. I put more fuel in it before I took it for a ride. I put in about 3 gallons. So it's up there where it should be according to what I've dumped in it. So it's working. All your lights work here. All these lights work. The temperature light didn't come on because it didn't overheat, obviously. The oil pressure light comes on when you first turn this key on. As soon as it starts, actually as soon as it starts cranking over, it goes away because it builds up oil pressure right away. The fuel injection system, when you first turn on the lights on, when it starts up, it's gone. So the only thing I didn't test was the low fuel gauge sensor, and I'm not sure that works. I think that's that thing that was on the side of the fuel pump, and I had to solder a wire back to it, so it may not work. I don't know. I didn't have any way to test it. I was just hoping once I soldered that wire back on that it would work, but when I only had about 1.5 gallons in here, that light didn't come on. But again, maybe it needs less than that. I don't know. It's only a 5-gallon tank, so I guess the new owners will find out if the light works, the gauge works. So if the light doesn't work, watch the gauge. You guys have a great day. We'll see you on the next video.